The wheelchair rolled to a stop beside the corner table, and Harrison Bennett felt every single pair of eyes in the cafe turn toward him. The hostess had smiled too brightly, her voice jumping an octave higher as she'd asked if he needed help. He'd politely declined, maneuvering himself into position with the practiced ease of someone who'd been doing this for 3 years. 3 years since the accident. 3 years since his entire world had shifted on its axis. His date was supposed to arrive at 2 o'clock. It was now 2:15. Harrison adjusted his watch, a platinum Rolex that had survived the crash better than his spine had. The coffee he'd ordered sat cooling in its cup, the foam art dissolving into something shapeless and sad. Around him, the afternoon crowd chatted and laughed, their conversations blending into a comfortable hum that somehow made his isolation feel even sharper. At 2:20, she walked in. Catherine, they'd been messaging for weeks through a dating app designed for professionals. Her profile picture showed a confident smile, dark hair, sharp business attire. She was a marketing director, divorced, looking for something real. Their conversations had been easy, intelligent. She'd seemed different from the others, less concerned with appearances, more interested in substance. Harrison watched her scan the cafe, her eyes moving past him once, twice, before finally landing on his face. Recognition flickered there, followed immediately by something else. Confusion, then understanding, then something that made Harrison's stomach turn to ice. She approached slowly, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Each step seemed heavier than the last. When she reached the table, she didn't sit down, she didn't even pull out the chair. She just stood there, her purse clutched against her body like a shield, her mouth opening and closing as she searched for words. Harrison, her voice came out thin, uncertain. "Catherine, it's good to finally meet you in person." He kept his tone warm, professional, refusing to acknowledge the elephant in the room, or rather, the wheelchair. Her eyes darted to the chair, then away, then back again. You didn't mention, your pictures," she trailed off, her cheeks flushing red. "Didn't mention what?" Harrison asked quietly. He knew exactly what she meant, but something in him needed to hear her say it, needed to witness her discomfort as payment for his own. "Look, I'm sorry, but I just got a call." The lie was transparent, clumsy. "My sister, she's having an emergency, family thing, I have to go, I'm really sorry, She was already backing away, already turning. "Maybe we can reschedule." But they both knew they wouldn't. Harrison watched her practically run for the door, weaving between tables with desperate speed. The cafe seemed to hold its breath for a moment, then conversations resumed, a little too loudly, a little too quickly. Nobody wanted to acknowledge what had just happened. Nobody wanted to make eye contact with the man in the wheelchair who'd just been abandoned. Harrison sat perfectly still, his hands resting on the armrests of his chair. Inside, something was crumbling, but his face remained composed. Years of boardroom negotiations had taught him how to keep his expression neutral even when everything inside was chaos. He'd built Bennett Technologies from nothing, turned it into a company worth $800 million, survived hostile takeovers and market crashes and competitors who'd tried to destroy him. But this simple act of human cruelty, it cut deeper than any business loss ever could. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel to support our growth. He should leave? Call Thomas, his driver, who waited in the parking garage with the specially modified van. Return to his penthouse apartment where the walls were exactly 23 feet high and the silence was absolute, where nobody could see him, where nobody could judge. But Harrison didn't move, couldn't move, because moving meant accepting defeat. Moving meant admitting that Catherine was right to run, that his wheelchair made him less than, made him unworthy of basic human decency. 3 years of physical therapy, of learning to navigate a world built for people who could walk, of rebuilding his company while rebuilding himself, and he still couldn't escape the simple fact that most people saw the chair before they saw him. The coffee was definitely cold now. He picked up the cup anyway, took a sip, forced himself to swallow the bitter liquid. Around him, life continued. A couple in the corner fed each other bites of cake, laughing. A group of college students debated something with passionate intensity, their laptops open, their energy boundless. An elderly man read a newspaper, his reading glasses perched on his nose. Normal people doing normal things. Harrison had forgotten what normal felt like. His phone buzzed, a text from his assistant, Rebecca. "Board meeting moved to Thursday. Patterson wants to discuss the merger. Also, your mother called again." Harrison typed back quickly, "Tell Patterson I'll review the numbers tonight. We'll call Mom later." He wouldn't call his mother later. Elizabeth Bennett had never quite accepted his condition, still spoke about experimental treatments and miracle cures she'd read about online. She meant well, but her inability to accept reality made every conversation exhausting. She wanted her son back, the son who'd played tennis and gone skiing and walked into rooms like he owned them. That son was gone. Harrison was still learning to accept that fact himself. "Mommy, look at that man. Why is he sitting all by himself? He looks really, really sad." The voice was small and clear, cutting through the ambient noise like a bell. Harrison turned his head toward the sound. Standing near the pastry display case was a little girl, maybe 5 years old, with her hair pulled into 2 puffy ponytails tied with bright yellow ribbons. She wore pink overalls and light-up sneakers that blinked with each step. Her brown eyes were fixed on Harrison with absolute, unfiltered curiosity. Beside her stood a woman in navy blue scrubs, clearly just off a shift from the hospital across the street. She had her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, strands escaping to frame her face. There were dark circles under her eyes that spoke of long hours and too little sleep, but her features were gentle, kind. When she looked down at her daughter, her entire face softened with love. "Ivy, sweetheart, we don't point at people," the woman said softly, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. But her own eyes had found Harrison's face, and unlike Catherine, they didn't dart away. They held steady, and in them, Harrison saw something he hadn't expected. Recognition. Not of who he was, Harrison Bennett, CEO and former cover of Business Weekly magazine, but recognition of what he was feeling. She saw his loneliness, his hurt, and in her eyes there was compassion without pity. "But Mommy, he's all alone and nobody's talking to him," Ivy insisted, her voice carrying across the cafe with the absolute confidence of a child who hadn't yet learned to be embarrassed. "That's not nice. People shouldn't be alone when they're sad." The woman's cheeks flushed slightly. She guided Ivy closer, and Harrison found himself sitting up straighter, his businessman instincts kicking in even as his heart hammered in his chest. He wasn't sure he could handle another rejection today, even from a 5-year-old. "I'm so sorry," the woman said as they approached. Her voice was warm, genuinely apologetic. "She's at that age where she says exactly what she's thinking. Filter development is still in progress." "I like that age," Harrison heard himself say. The words surprised him. Adults could use more of that honesty. Ivy stepped closer, tilting her head to study him with scientific interest. "Were you waiting for someone? Because if you were and they didn't show up, that's really mean. My teacher, Miss Rodriguez, says we should always keep our promises and be kind to people." "Ivy," her mother warned gently, but Harrison shook his head. "Your teacher sounds very wise," he said directly to Ivy. "And yes, I was waiting for someone, but I think they got confused and went to the wrong place." "Oh," Ivy's face brightened immediately. "That's okay then. Getting lost isn't mean, it's just an accident, right, Mommy? Like when Mommy got lost trying to find my doctor's new office and we were late." "Something like that," her mother agreed, though her eyes told Harrison she knew exactly what had happened. She knew he'd been stood up, abandoned, left sitting here like yesterday's news, but she was kind enough not to say it. "I'm Claire Montgomery," she continued, extending her hand. "And this very talkative person is Ivy." Harrison shook her hand, struck by how different this moment felt from the one with Catherine. Claire's grip was firm, professional, the handshake of someone accustomed to difficult situations and uncomfortable truths, a nurse's handshake. "Harrison Bennett," he replied. "It's nice to meet you both." "Harrison," Ivy repeated, testing the name out. "That's a fancy name. Are you a prince or something?" "Ivy," Claire laughed, the sound genuine and unforced. "Not everyone with a fancy name is a prince." "Just a businessman," Harrison said, finding himself smiling for the first time in hours. "Much less exciting, I'm afraid." "Businessmen are important too," Ivy announced authoritatively. "They make jobs for people. My Uncle Patrick is a businessman and he says he helps people buy houses." She paused, her eyes dropping to his wheelchair with the same curious intensity she'd given his face. "Why do you have that special chair?" "Ivy, that's not," Claire began, but again Harrison interrupted. "It's okay," he said, and meant it. There was something refreshing about Ivy's direct question, so different from the sideways glances and awkward silence most adults offered. "I was in a car accident a few years ago. My legs don't work the way they used to, so I use this chair to get around." "Oh," Ivy processed this information seriously. "Does it hurt?" "Sometimes," Harrison admitted, "but mostly it's just different." Different isn't bad, Ivy declared. My friend Tommy at school has glasses and that's different. And Sarah has two mommies and that's different. And I have to take special medicine for my heart and that's different too. She said this last part matter-of-factly, as if having a heart condition was as ordinary as having brown eyes or preferring chocolate ice cream. Claire's expression tightened almost imperceptibly, a mother's automatic fear flickering across her features before she controlled it. Ivy has a congenital heart defect, she explained quietly. She's doing well, but she needs monitoring and medication. I'm sorry, Harrison said, and he was. Looking at this bright, vibrant child, it was hard to imagine anything being wrong with her. But he of all people understood that what you couldn't see could still be devastating. It's okay, Ivy said with a shrug. The doctors are really nice and they give me stickers. Plus, Mommy says my heart is just extra special because it works extra hard to keep me going. She paused, then made a decision that seemed momentous to her. Do you want to sit with us? Mommy and I were going to get cake. You can have some too if you want. Sharing is caring, that's what Miss Rodriguez says. Claire looked mortified. Ivy, Mr. Bennett probably has plans. Harrison, he corrected automatically. And actually, my afternoon just cleared up unexpectedly. The words came out before he could think better of them, before he could remember all the reasons why accepting this invitation was a terrible idea, before he could retreat back into the safety of isolation. Claire studied him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. She was deciding something, weighing options, calculating risks. Finally, she nodded. We'd be happy to have your company, but I'm warning you, Ivy talks a lot when she's comfortable with someone and she asks about 1,000,000 questions. 1,000,003, Ivy corrected seriously. I counted once. Harrison laughed, an actual laugh that came from somewhere deep in his chest, somewhere he'd forgotten existed. I think I can handle that. They moved to a larger table near the window, where afternoon sunlight poured through the glass in golden sheets. Harrison maneuvered his chair into position while Ivy chattered about the different types of cake available. Claire excused herself to place their order at the counter, leaving Harrison alone with Ivy for a moment. Are you rich? Ivy asked suddenly, her eyes on his expensive watch and tailored shirt. Ivy, Claire called from the counter, somehow having heard this despite the distance. It's okay, Harrison called back. To Ivy he said, I have money, yes. That's good, Ivy nodded approvingly. Mommy works really hard, but sometimes she cries when the bills come. She doesn't think I see, but I do. I wish we had more money so Mommy wouldn't cry. The simple honesty of this statement hit Harrison harder than any business setback ever had. Here was this child, dealing with a serious health condition, worried about her mother's financial stress. Meanwhile, he had more money than he could spend in 3 lifetimes and had been wallowing in self-pity over a failed date. Claire returned with a tray laden with cake slices and fresh coffee. She caught the end of Ivy's comment and her cheeks flushed red. Ivy, we don't talk about private family things with people we just met. But Harrison is nice, Ivy protested, and you said we should always tell the truth. Truth is important. Claire agreed, setting down the plates with slightly trembling hands. Her embarrassment was palpable, but so is privacy. I understand, Harrison said gently. He wanted to say more, wanted to tell Claire that he admired her strength, that raising a child alone while working as a nurse and managing medical bills took a courage he wasn't sure he possessed. But he sensed that charity or pity would drive her away faster than Catherine's heels had carried her out the door. Instead, he focused on his cake, a rich chocolate creation that Ivy had insisted was the best in the entire world. She hadn't been wrong. For several minutes they ate in comfortable silence, Ivy swinging her legs under the table, her light-up shoes flashing rhythmically. So what kind of business are you in? Claire asked eventually, her professional composure restored. Technology, Harrison replied. We develop software solutions for healthcare systems, actually, electronic medical records, patient management systems, that sort of thing. Claire's eyebrows rose. Bennett Technologies, that's you. You've heard of us. Heard of you? The hospital just finished implementing your new EMR system last month. It's incredible. Cut our charting time nearly in half. She paused, studying him with new interest. I had no idea the CEO was so young. 34, Harrison said. Started the company when I was 26, right out of graduate school, had this idea that healthcare technology didn't have to be complicated and clunky. It could be intuitive, efficient, actually helpful to the people using it. Well, you succeeded, Claire said warmly. The nurses on my floor were skeptical at first, but now we can't imagine going back to the old system. You've made a real difference in how we care for patients. Something in Harrison's chest expanded. When was the last time someone had talked to him about his work with genuine appreciation rather than dollar signs in their eyes? When had someone last seen his accomplishments rather than his limitations? "What's it like being a nurse?" Ivy asked suddenly, looking at her mother with curious eyes. "You never really tell me about work." Claire considered the question carefully. "It's hard," she admitted. "Really hard sometimes. I see people on their worst days when they're scared and hurting. But I also get to help them feel better. I get to hold someone's hand when they're frightened or explain things so they understand what's happening to their body. There's nothing quite like seeing a patient walk out of the hospital healthy when they came in so sick." "Like when I was in the hospital last year," Ivy added. "Mommy wasn't my nurse because that's not allowed, but she visited me every day even though she was working really hard. And she read me stories and brought me my stuffed bunny from home." Claire's hand reached out automatically to stroke her daughter's hair, a gesture so tender it made Harrison's throat tight. "That was a scary time," she said softly, "but you were so brave." "The doctors fixed my heart," Ivy explained to Harrison. "Well, not fixed exactly. They put in a special thing that helps it work better. Now I just have to take medicine and go to checkups, and I can do almost everything other kids do." "Almost everything?" Harrison asked. "I can't run really fast for a long time," Ivy said matter-of-factly. "And sometimes I get tired easier than my friends, but that's okay, I'm still me." "I'm still me?" The simple acceptance in those words struck Harrison profoundly. This 5-year-old had figured out something he was still struggling with after 3 years. Her heart condition didn't define her. It was part of her story, but not the whole story. She was still Ivy, still vibrant and curious and joyful, just with some limitations she'd learned to navigate. "You're very wise," Harrison told her seriously. "I think adults forget that sometimes, that we're still ourselves even when things change." Ivy beamed at the compliment. Claire, however, was watching him with knowing eyes. She understood what he was really saying, the deeper meaning beneath the surface. "Change is hard," Claire said quietly. "Especially when it's not change we chose, but I've found that sometimes the things we think will destroy us actually teach us what we're made of." "Is that from an inspirational poster?" Harrison asked, trying to lighten the suddenly heavy moment. Claire laughed. "Probably, but it's also true. 3 years ago when Ivy's condition was diagnosed, I thought my world was ending. I was a single mother barely making ends meet, and suddenly I had this massive medical crisis to deal with. But we got through it, we're still getting through it, and we're stronger for it." "Mommy's the strongest person in the whole world," Ivy announced. "She can carry me all the way up 3 flights of stairs when the elevator is broken, and she only stops once to breathe heavy." "Breathe heavily," Claire corrected automatically, but she was smiling. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing easily between serious topics and light-hearted ones. Ivy told elaborate stories about her kindergarten class, complete with dramatic reenactments. Claire shared funny anecdotes from the hospital, carefully maintaining patient privacy, but capturing the human moments that made her job meaningful. Harrison found himself talking more than he had in months, sharing stories from the early days of his company, the risks he'd taken, the failures he'd survived before success found him. Not once did Claire treat him differently because of his wheelchair. She didn't speak more loudly or slowly. She didn't offer unwanted help or make assumptions about his capabilities. She simply treated him like a person, like someone worth knowing. It was such a stark contrast to Catherine's reaction that Harrison felt something fundamental shifting inside him. "We should probably go," Claire said eventually, checking her watch. "Ivy's medication schedule waits for no one, and I have a shift tomorrow morning at 6. 6, Harrison repeated. "That's brutal." 12-hour shifts 3 days a week, Claire explained, starting to gather their trash. "It's exhausting, but it means I have 4 days with Ivy. Quality time is more important than anything." Harrison watched them prepare to leave, and suddenly the thought of returning to his empty penthouse felt unbearable. "Could I?" he started, then stopped. What was he doing? These were strangers. They'd spent one afternoon together. He had no right to intrude further into their lives. But Ivy was looking at him with those wide, hopeful eyes, and Claire was waiting patiently for him to finish his sentence. "Could I give you my number?" he finished. "Maybe we could do this again sometime if you want, no pressure." Claire hesitated, and Harrison could see the calculations running behind her eyes. Single mother, protective, wary of strangers. Especially wealthy men who might want something. He couldn't blame her. "I'd like that," she said finally, surprising them both. "Ivy obviously enjoys your company, and honestly, it's nice to talk to another adult who doesn't just want to discuss medical symptoms or insurance claims." They exchanged numbers, and as Claire and Ivy prepared to leave, Ivy suddenly rushed forward and wrapped her small arms around Harrison's neck in an impulsive hug. "You're my friend now," she declared. "And friends don't let friends be sad alone, so next time you're sad you call mommy and we'll come have cake with you, okay?" Harrison's arms came up automatically to return the hug, this small gesture of affection from a child who barely knew him, hitting him with unexpected force. "Okay," he managed, his voice rough. "That's a deal." Claire gently extracted her daughter, her own eyes suspiciously bright. "Come on, Ivy, let's let Harrison finish his afternoon." Harrison watched them leave, Ivy's light-up shoes flashing with each skip, Claire's hand gentle on her daughter's shoulder. At the door, Ivy turned and waved enthusiastically, and Harrison waved back. For the first time since the accident, since the moment his car had hydroplaned on a rain-slicked highway and his entire life had changed in an instant, Harrison felt something he'd almost forgot. Hope. Not the aggressive, determined hope he'd forced himself to feel during physical therapy, not the professional optimism he projected in boardrooms. This was quieter, softer, more genuine. The hope that maybe, just maybe, he could still have connection, still have friendship, still have moments of simple human joy. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Ivy says to tell you that chocolate cake fixes most problems. Claire." Harrison smiled, typing back, "What about the problems it doesn't fix?" The response came quickly, "Those take strawberry, we'll try that next time." Next time, the promise of it settled over Harrison like warm sunlight. He sat in the cafe for another few minutes, watching people come and go, but this time he didn't feel invisible. He felt seen. Actually seen, not despite his wheelchair but including it as one part of the complex whole that made him who he was. Finally, he called Thomas and headed home, but the penthouse felt different that evening. Less like a fortress and more like just a place he lived. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city spread out below him in glittering lights, full of millions of people living millions of lives. Somewhere out there, Claire was giving Ivy her medication and reading her a bedtime story. Somewhere out there, life was happening in all its messy, beautiful, complicated glory. And for the first time in 3 years, Harrison wanted to be part of it again. The morning sun cut through Harrison's office windows in sharp geometric patterns, falling across the mahogany desk where he'd spread the quarterly reports. Numbers that should have commanded his full attention blurred slightly as his mind wandered, replaying yesterday's encounter at the cafe. 24 hours had passed since he'd met Claire and Ivy, and he checked his phone approximately 50 times, debating whether to send a message or wait for them to reach out first. "Mr. Bennett," Rebecca's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your 10 o'clock is here, the Patterson team for the merger discussion." Harrison straightened in his chair, forcibly pushing thoughts of chocolate cake and light-up shoes to the back of his mind. "Send them in." The meeting lasted 3 hours, a grueling back and forth about valuation, integration timelines, and employee retention. Harrison negotiated with the precision that had made him successful, his mind sharp despite its wandering that morning. When Patterson's lead attorney tried to slip in a clause that would have given them controlling interest in Bennett Technologies' healthcare division, Harrison caught it immediately and shut it down. By noon, they'd reached a tentative agreement that protected his company while allowing for strategic growth. As the Patterson team filed out, Rebecca appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. She was 42, efficient to the point of intimidation, and had been with Harrison since the company's second year. She'd also been there the day of the accident, had visited him every single day during his 2-month hospital stay, and had never once treated him differently afterward. "The Chen contract needs your signature," she said, crossing to his desk. "Also, your mother called again, 3 times actually. She wants to know if you've tried that specialist in Switzerland she sent you information about." Harrison suppressed a sigh. "Tell her I'll call this weekend." "You said that last weekend," Rebecca pointed out, not unkindly. "She's worried about you." "She's always worried about me." Harrison signed the contract with quick practice strokes. "What else?" Rebecca hesitated, which was unusual for her. "Are you okay? You seem different today, distracted but in a good way, if that makes sense." Harrison looked up, surprised. Rebecca rarely commented on his personal state. "I'm fine, just thinking." "About?" "Nothing important." "The nothing important that has you checking your phone every 5 minutes?" Rebecca's eyebrow arched knowingly. "Is there something you want to tell me?" Harrison felt heat creep up his neck, which was ridiculous. He was a grown man, a CEO, not a teenager with a crush. Except that's exactly what this felt like, he realized with dawning horror. A crush. On a woman he'd spent one afternoon with. A woman who'd shown him basic human kindness and whose daughter had hugged him goodbye. "I met someone," he admitted finally, "yesterday at the cafe." Rebecca's expression cycled through surprise, pleasure, then concern. "Someone like a date someone?" "Not exactly, she wasn't my date, the actual date didn't show up." Even now, remembering Catherine's hasty retreat stung. "But this woman Claire, she and her daughter sat with me, we talked, it was nice." "Nice," Rebecca repeated, her tone suggesting this was a massive understatement. Harrison Bennett, who hasn't gone on a date in 2 years, who works 70-hour weeks, who lives alone in that enormous penthouse like some kind of brooding hero from a novel, met a woman who was nice. "She's a nurse," Harrison continued, ignoring Rebecca's sarcasm. "Single mother, her daughter has a heart condition. They're real. Does that make sense?" Everything felt real for the first time in forever. Rebecca's expression softened. "Did you get her number?" "Yes." "Have you called her?" "Not yet." "What are you waiting for?" Harrison gestured vaguely at his wheelchair, at the office, at the life he'd built that suddenly felt incomplete. "I don't know. What if yesterday was just a fluke? What if she was only being kind because her daughter was there? What if she actually liked you?" Rebecca interrupted. "What if this is the chance you've been waiting for? The universe rarely drops opportunities in your lap, Harrison. When it does, you're supposed to grab them." Before Harrison could respond, his phone buzzed on the desk. Both he and Rebecca stared at it for a beat. Then Harrison grabbed it so quickly he nearly knocked over his coffee. The message was from Claire. "Ivy has been talking about her new friend Harrison all morning. She drew you a picture at school. Would you like to see it?" Harrison's fingers flew across the keyboard. "I'd love to see it." 30 seconds later, an image loaded on his screen. It was a child's drawing, stick figures in bright crayon. One figure sat in what was clearly meant to be a wheelchair with a huge smile. Next to him stood 2 other figures, one tall with a ponytail, one small with pigtails. Above them, in wobbly letters, Ivy had written, "My friend Harrison, who is nice." Something in Harrison's chest cracked open. He stared at the drawing for a long moment, this simple representation of an afternoon that had meant everything to him and apparently had meant something to Ivy too. "That's the sweetest thing I've ever seen," Rebecca said, looking over his shoulder. "If you don't call this woman right now, I'm revoking your phone privileges." Harrison typed, "Tell Ivy it's beautiful and that I meant what I said about next time. Are you free this Saturday?" The response took longer this time. Harrison imagined Claire on her break at the hospital, considering his invitation, weighing risks and possibilities. Finally, "Ivy has a doctor's appointment at 2. We could do something afterward if you're available, maybe around 4. "Perfect," Harrison wrote back. "The botanical gardens, Ivy might enjoy seeing the butterflies, they have a special exhibition." "She'd love that. See you Saturday." Harrison set down his phone, aware that he was grinning like an absolute fool. Rebecca was watching him with an expression of such satisfaction that he almost laughed. "Don't say it," he warned. Don't say what? That you look happier than you have in years, that maybe this is exactly what you need, that I'm going to clear your Saturday schedule completely so you have zero excuses, Rebecca smiled. I wouldn't dream of it. The rest of the week passed in a blur of meetings, conference calls, and strategic planning sessions, but underneath the routine of work, Harrison felt something stirring. Anticipation, nervousness. The feeling of standing on the edge of something significant without knowing whether it would be wonderful or devastating. On Friday evening, he found himself at an upscale men's store in downtown, something he hadn't done since before the accident. The sales associate, a young man named Kevin, approached with professional courtesy. Looking for anything specific, sir? Harrison gestured vaguely at the racks of clothing. Something casual, not business attire but not sloppy either. He paused, unsure how to categorize Saturday's outing. For spending time outside. Kevin's eyes fell to the wheelchair, then back to Harrison's face without a flicker of discomfort. Got it. Are we talking date casual or friendly casual? Honestly, I'm not sure. The line between those two can be pretty thin, Kevin agreed. He pulled several options, holding them up for Harrison's consideration. This might work, dark jeans, comfortable but polished, button down in a casual fabric, maybe this blue, it brings out your eyes without looking like you're trying too hard. 20 minutes later, Harrison left with 3 new outfits and a strange sense of hope. When was the last time he'd cared about what he wore outside of work? When was the last time appearance had mattered for something personal rather than professional? Saturday arrived with perfect weather, the kind of late spring day where the temperature hovered in the comfortable range and the sky stretched clear and blue. Harrison arrived at the botanical gardens early, parking in the accessible spot closest to the entrance. He'd been here once before, years ago, with a business colleague who'd wanted to discuss a deal in a neutral setting. He remembered very little about that visit except the colleague's eventual betrayal. Today felt entirely different. At 3:55, he spotted them. Claire walked with Ivy's hand clasped firmly in hers, both of them dressed in comfortable clothes suited for walking. Ivy wore yellow shorts and a white shirt with a sunflower on it, her hair in those familiar puff ponytails, today decorated with yellow ribbons that matched her outfit. Claire had traded her scrubs for simple jeans and a light green blouse, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that suggested the doctor's appointment hadn't been easy. Harrison? Ivy broke free from her mother's grip and ran toward him, her shoes lighting up with each step. She stopped just short of crashing into his wheelchair, remembering at the last second to be careful. We're here, Mommy said we might see real butterflies today. Dozens of them, Harrison confirmed, smiling at her enthusiasm. Maybe hundreds. He looked up at Claire, who'd caught up to her daughter. How did the appointment go? Claire's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Fine, everything's stable, just routine monitoring. The way she said it told Harrison it hadn't been routine at all, but he didn't push. Instead, he gestured toward the entrance. Shall we? I've already got our tickets. You didn't have to do that, Claire protested. Consider it a thank you for the chocolate cake therapy, Harrison said lightly. Besides, I want to, please. Claire studied him for a moment, then nodded. Thank you, that's very kind. They entered the gardens, following signs toward the Butterfly Conservatory. The path was well-maintained, accessible, winding through sections of carefully cultivated flowers and plants. Ivy darted ahead, then back, then ahead again, her energy seemingly boundless despite whatever the doctor's appointment had revealed. She's amazing, Harrison observed, watching Ivy examine a particularly interesting flower with intense concentration. So full of life. She is, Claire agreed quietly. The doctors are always surprised by her energy levels. Most kids with her condition tire more easily, but Ivy just refuses to slow down. I don't know if that's determination or denial or just who she is. It's courage, Harrison said. She knows she's different, but she doesn't let it stop her. That takes real bravery. Claire glanced at him sideways. You sound like you understand that from experience. Maybe a little, Harrison maneuvered around a family stopped in the middle of the path. When I first got out of the hospital, I thought my life was over. Everything I'd built, everything I'd planned, it all seemed impossible. I spent about 6 months feeling sorry for myself. Only 6 months, Claire's tone was wry. That's impressive self-pity restraint. Harrison laughed. Okay, maybe longer, maybe I'm still working on it, but I realized eventually that I could either give up or figure out how to move forward. The person I was before the accident, he's gone, but the person I am now, he can still do things, maybe not the same things, but important things, meaningful things. They reached the Butterfly Conservatory, a large glass structure where hundreds of butterflies from around the world flew freely among tropical plants. The temperature inside was warmer, more humid. Ivy gasped audibly as a blue morpho butterfly landed on a nearby railing, its wings opening and closing slowly. "Mommy, look, it's so pretty." "It's beautiful, baby," Claire agreed, pulling out her phone to take a picture. For the next hour, they wandered through the conservatory, Ivy providing running commentary on every butterfly she spotted. Harrison found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years, the simple pleasure of watching a child discover something wonderful, washing away the usual tension he carried in his shoulders. At one point, a small yellow butterfly landed directly on Harrison's shoulder. Ivy noticed immediately, her eyes going wide. "Harrison, you have a butterfly friend, hold very still." He froze, aware of Claire raising her phone to capture the moment. The butterfly stayed for perhaps 30 seconds, wings opening and closing before lifting off to explore elsewhere. But those 30 seconds felt weighted with meaning Harrison couldn't quite name, as if the universe was telling him something about beauty landing in unexpected places, about staying still long enough to notice it. "I got the picture," Claire said softly, showing him the image. In it, Harrison was smiling genuinely, his eyes focused on the butterfly with childlike wonder. He looked happy, whole, not like a man defined by what he'd lost, but like a man experiencing something precious. "Could you send that to me?" he asked. "Of course." They continued walking, eventually leaving the conservatory for the outdoor gardens. Ivy was starting to slow down now, her earlier energy fading. Claire noticed immediately, her mother's instinct kicking in. "Ivy, baby, want to take a rest?" "I'm not tired," Ivy insisted, but even as she said it, she stumbled slightly. Claire caught her automatically, scooping her daughter up into her arms. "Let's sit for a bit," Claire suggested, carrying Ivy toward a nearby bench. "We've been walking a lot." Harrison followed, concerned. Ivy's face had lost some of its color, her breathing slightly more labored than it should be. Claire settled onto the bench, Ivy in her lap, and began rubbing her daughter's back in slow, soothing circles. "Is she okay?" Harrison asked quietly. "She's fine," Claire said, but her voice was strained. "This happens sometimes, she just needs a minute to catch her breath and rest. The appointment this morning, they increased her medication dosage, it makes her more tired." "Because her condition is getting worse?" Harrison asked, his gut clenching. Claire's expression was carefully neutral, the face of a nurse trained to remain calm in crisis. But her eyes betrayed her fear. "Not worse exactly, just not improving the way they'd hoped. They're talking about another procedure, nothing immediate but within the next 6 months probably." "I'm sorry," Harrison said inadequately. "We'll handle it," Claire replied, her chin lifting with determination that reminded him strongly of Ivy. "We always do." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Ivy dozing against her mother's shoulder. Harrison watched other families pass by, couples holding hands, children running ahead of tired parents. Normal life continuing all around them while they existed in this small bubble of uncertainty and fear and love. "Can I ask you something?" Claire said eventually. "Anything." "Why did you really invite us here today? I mean, Ivy and I, we're just people you met once. You're Harrison Bennett, you could be doing anything, seeing anyone. Why spend your Saturday with a single mom and her kid?" Harrison considered the question carefully. "Because Wednesday afternoon at that cafe was the first time since my accident that someone treated me like I was just a person. Not Harrison Bennett, CEO, not the guy in the wheelchair who needs help, just someone worth knowing. That's rare. I wanted more of it." Claire absorbed this, her fingers still moving in gentle circles on Ivy's back. "It must be lonely being you." "It is," Harrison admitted. More than I usually let myself acknowledge. I have employees, board members, business associates, but friends, real friends who see me and not just what I can do for them, those are harder to find. I understand that, Claire said quietly. Single motherhood is isolating in ways I didn't expect. The other nurses at work, they're friendly, but they all have their own lives, their own families. And dating, she laughed without humor. Who wants to date a woman with a sick kid and a mountain of medical debt? I gave up on that dream a long time ago. Medical debt, Harrison asked carefully. Claire's face flushed. I shouldn't have said that, it's not your concern. I'm asking as a friend, Harrison said, and friends help each other, right? That's what Ivy told me. Ivy talks too much sometimes, Claire muttered, but there was affection in her voice. She sighed. The insurance covers most of her care, but the copays and out-of-network specialists add up. I've been paying it down, but it's slow, and if she needs another surgery. She trailed off, looking down at her sleeping daughter with such fierce love it made Harrison's chest ache. An idea was forming in Harrison's mind, but he pushed it away for now. This wasn't the moment. They barely knew each other, but still the thought lingered. He could help. He had the resources. Why shouldn't he use them for something that actually mattered? We should probably get her home, Claire said, starting to stand with Ivy still in her arms. Let me help, Harrison said automatically. Claire hesitated, then nodded. Could you carry her backpack? It's heavier than it looks, all her emergency medications. Harrison took the small backpack, sobered by this reminder of how precarious Ivy's health really was. They made their way slowly toward the exit, Ivy stirring occasionally but mostly sleeping against her mother's shoulder. At Claire's car, an older sedan with a dent in the passenger door and a child safety seat in the back, Claire carefully buckled Ivy in. The little girl woke enough to smile sleepily at Harrison. Thank you for the butterflies, she mumbled. They were magic. You're very welcome, Harrison said, his throat tight. Maybe we can do it again sometime. Tomorrow, Ivy asked hopefully. Ivy, Harrison has a life, Claire chided gently. He can't spend all his time with us. Actually, Harrison found himself saying, I don't have plans tomorrow. If you're free, maybe we could do something low-key, lunch or just hanging out. Claire looked at him searchingly as if trying to understand what he really wanted. You're serious. Completely serious. Why? The question was blunt, tired. I need to understand why you're pursuing this friendship or whatever this is, because Ivy, she gets attached easily, and if you're going to disappear in a week or a month when the novelty wears off, I need to know now. I need to protect her. The fierce protectiveness in Claire's voice reminded Harrison of a lioness defending her cub. It was admirable. It was also heartbreaking, this assumption that people would leave, that care was temporary. I'm not going anywhere, Harrison said firmly. I can't promise I'll be perfect at this, at friendship or whatever we're building, but I can promise I'll be honest. And right now, honestly, spending time with you and Ivy makes me happier than I've been in years. I'd like to keep doing that if you'll let me. Claire stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she nodded. Okay, tomorrow, but nothing fancy, just come over to our place. I'll make lunch. Fair warning, our apartment is small and not exactly penthouse quality. I don't care about that, Harrison said truthfully. She gave him the address, then got into her car. As she pulled away, Ivy waved sleepily from her car seat and Harrison waved back. He sat in the parking lot for a long time after they left, processing the day, the emotions swirling through him, hope and fear and possibility and doubt. The realization that he was standing on the edge of something that could change everything. The question was whether he was brave enough to take the leap. His phone buzzed, a text from Claire. Thank you for today, you made Ivy very happy. Harrison replied, she made me happy too, both of you did. A pause, then see you tomorrow around noon. I'll be there. Harrison sat back in his wheelchair, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. Tomorrow he'd go to Claire's apartment. Tomorrow he'd take another step into this strange new territory of genuine human connection. Tomorrow he might start becoming someone who wasn't defined by his past or his limitations, but by his choices, by who he decided to be going forward. The thought was terrifying, it was also thrilling. For the first time in 3 years, Harrison Bennett was looking forward to tomorrow. Sunday morning arrived with rain. the kind of steady downpour that turned the city gray and made Harrison question every decision that had led him to this moment. He sat in his penthouse kitchen, staring at the address Claire had given him, second-guessing everything. What was he doing inserting himself into the life of a woman and child he barely knew? What could he possibly offer them besides money, which Claire clearly had too much pride to accept? His phone rang. Thomas, his driver. "Morning, Mr. Bennett, still planning to head out at 11:30. Harrison glanced at the clock. 10:45. He could cancel, make up some excuse about work, about not feeling well, return to the comfortable isolation he'd built around himself like armor. It would be safer, simpler. "Mr. Bennett," Thomas prompted. "Yes," Harrison heard himself say. 11:30, I'll meet you in the garage." He dressed carefully in one of the new casual outfits from Friday, then changed his mind and picked something else. Then changed back. Finally, disgusted with his own indecision, he grabbed his wallet and phone and headed down to the garage where Thomas waited with the modified van. "Big day?" Thomas asked as he secured Harrison's wheelchair. "Just lunch with friends," Harrison replied, trying to sound casual. "Must be some pretty special friends," Thomas observed with a knowing smile. "Haven't seen you this nervous since that presentation to the board 3 years ago." "I'm not nervous." "Whatever you say, boss." The drive across the city took 40 minutes, leading them away from the gleaming high-rises of downtown toward a neighborhood Harrison rarely visited. Working-class apartments, small shops, a grocery store with hand-painted signs advertising sales. Claire's building was a 3-story structure with faded brick and a front door that required a buzzer. "Want me to wait?" Thomas asked. Harrison considered. "No, I'll call when I'm ready. Could be a few hours." Thomas's smile widened. "Take your time, Mr. Bennett, take all the time you need." The building had a ramp, thank goodness, though it was steep enough to make Harrison work for it. He pressed the buzzer for apartment 2B and Claire's voice crackled through the speaker. "Harrison, come on up, the elevator's on the right." The elevator was ancient, small, and smelled faintly of cleaning solution and someone's lunch. Harrison rode to the second floor, his heart beating faster with each passing second. What was wrong with him? He negotiated million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. He'd rebuilt his entire life after a devastating accident. Why did the prospect of having lunch with a nurse and her 5-year-old daughter terrify him so completely? The elevator doors opened to reveal a narrow hallway with worn carpet. Apartment 2B was the third door on the left. Before Harrison could knock, it swung open to reveal Ivy, bouncing on her toes with excitement. "Harrison, you came. Mommy said you might not come because of the rain, but I said you would because you promised, and promises are important." "Ivy, let the man get inside before you talk his ear off," Claire called from somewhere deeper in the apartment. The apartment was small, as Claire had warned. The door opened directly into a living room that doubled as a dining area with a tiny kitchen visible beyond. But what the space lacked in size, it made up for in warmth. Drawings covered the refrigerator, held in place by alphabet magnets. A worn but comfortable-looking couch sat against one wall, blankets folded neatly on one end. Books were everywhere on shelves, stacked on the coffee table, a testimony to someone who valued stories. Claire emerged from what Harrison assumed was the bedroom, wearing jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked younger like this, more relaxed, though he could still see the exhaustion lingering in her eyes. "Welcome to our humble home," she said with a self-deprecating smile. "I know it's not what you're used to." "It's perfect," Harrison said, and meant it. There was life here, love, the kind of home feeling his expensive penthouse had never achieved. "Thank you for having me." "Lunch is almost ready, just spaghetti, nothing fancy." "Ivy, show Harrison where he can put his jacket." Ivy grabbed Harrison's rain-dampened jacket and carefully hung it on a hook by the door that was exactly her height. "This is my hook," she explained seriously. "Mommy has the high one and this one is for guests. You're a guest but also a friend, so you can use it whenever you want." They settled in the living area, Harrison positioning his wheelchair near the couch. Ivy immediately climbed up beside him, chattering about a movie she'd watched that morning, about the rain, about how her stuffed bunny Mr. Whiskers was having a tea party in her room, and did Harrison want to meet him later. "Maybe after lunch," Harrison suggested, charmed by her enthusiasm. Claire served the meal at a small table that barely fit 3 place settings. The spaghetti was simple but delicious, served with garlic bread and salad. As they ate, Harrison found himself relaxing, the initial awkwardness fading into comfortable conversation. "So what does a billionaire CEO do on a normal Sunday?" Claire asked, twirling pasta around her fork. "Usually work," Harrison admitted. "Answer emails, review reports, plan for the week ahead." "That sounds boring," Ivy announced. "Sundays are for fun. Mommy says we have to rest on Sundays because she works so hard the other days." "Ivy's right," Claire agreed. "Sundays are sacred, no work allowed. We have pajama mornings, make a big breakfast, sometimes go to the park if the weather's nice, just us time." "That sounds wonderful," Harrison said, and he meant it. When was the last time he'd taken a full day off? When was the last time he'd done something just for the joy of it, with no agenda, no purpose beyond simple pleasure? After lunch, Ivy insisted on showing Harrison her room. Claire helped clear the table while Ivy dragged Harrison down the short hallway. Her room was tiny, barely large enough for a twin bed, a small dresser, and a toy box. But the walls were covered in drawings, stars, glow-in-the-dark stickers on the ceiling, a testament to a child's imagination. "This is Mr. Whiskers," Ivy said, introducing Harrison to a well-worn stuffed rabbit. "He's been with me since I was a baby. He even came to the hospital during my surgery." Harrison took the rabbit carefully, noting how loved it clearly was, the fur worn thin in places from countless hugs. "He must be very special." "He is. Mommy says he's brave because he stayed with me when I was scared." Ivy climbed onto her bed, patting the space beside her. "Want to read a story? Mommy usually reads to me, but she's tired today. The doctor appointment yesterday made her sad even though she pretends it didn't." The casual observation hit Harrison hard. This 5-year-old, dealing with her own health challenges, was worried about her mother. "What story do you want to read?" he asked, deflecting. Ivy selected a picture book about a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, beautifully illustrated and well-worn from repeated readings. Harrison pulled his wheelchair close to the bed and began to read, Ivy leaning against his shoulder, her small hand resting on his arm. He was halfway through when he noticed Claire standing in the doorway, watching them with an expression he couldn't quite read. Sadness, maybe, or longing, or something more complicated than either. "Don't stop on my account," she said softly when she noticed him looking. "I just came to check on you both." Harrison finished the story, Ivy's questions and commentary extending what should have been a 10-minute book into 20. When they finally emerged from the bedroom, Claire had made coffee and was curled up on the couch, a medical journal open in her lap. "Homework?" Harrison asked, accepting a cup. "Continuing education. Nurses have to keep current on practices and procedures. This particular article is about pediatric cardiac care." She closed the journal. "Trying to understand everything the doctors tell me about Ivy's condition. Sometimes the medical jargon makes my head spin, even with my training." "Is it helping?" Claire's expression darkened. "It's helping me understand why they want to do another surgery. Her valve, the one they tried to repair last time, it's not functioning optimally. They want to replace it entirely this time, which means open heart surgery, weeks of recovery, and costs that." She trailed off, glancing at Ivy, who was now playing with blocks on the floor. "Costs that I'm not sure how I'll manage." "Claire," Harrison began, but she held up her hand. "I know what you're going to say, and I appreciate it, I really do, but I can't accept money from you. We barely know each other." "Then get to know me better," Harrison said firmly. "Let me be in your life. Let me help, not because you're a charity case, but because I want to, because I can, and because it matters." "Why does it matter?" Claire asked, her voice sharp with frustration and fear. "Why do we matter to you?" Harrison set down his coffee cup, searching for words that could express the tangle of emotions inside him. 3 years ago my life ended. Not literally, obviously, but the life I knew, the person I was, he died in that car crash. I spent months learning to be someone else, someone I didn't particularly like. I built walls around myself because it was easier than dealing with the pity and the awkwardness and the way people treated me like I was broken. He paused, watching Ivy stack blocks with intense concentration. "Then I met you and Ivy. And for the first time since the accident, I felt like maybe I wasn't broken after all. Maybe I was just different, and different could still be good. You didn't see my wheelchair first, you saw me, that's rare, that's valuable, that's worth fighting for. Claire's eyes had filled with tears. Harrison, I can't promise you anything, I can't promise where this goes or what it becomes. My priority has to be Ivy always, her health, her happiness, her future. I wouldn't respect you if it wasn't, Harrison said. I'm not asking for promises, I'm just asking for a chance. Let me be part of your lives. Let me help carry some of the weight you've been carrying alone for so long. Mommy, why are you crying? Ivy had noticed her mother's tears, abandoning her blocks to climb onto the couch. Happy tears, baby, Claire said, pulling her daughter close. Sometimes people cry when they're happy. Are you happy Harrison is here? Ivy asked. Yes, sweetie, I am. Me too, Ivy announced. Harrison is the best friend ever, even better than Tommy from school, and Tommy shares his cookies. The moment was broken by laughter, the tension easing. They spent the rest of the afternoon in comfortable domesticity. Harrison taught Ivy a card game his grandmother had taught him as a child. Claire made popcorn and they watched an animated movie Ivy had seen at least a dozen times but never tired of. At one point, Ivy fell asleep between them on the couch, her head on Claire's lap, her feet stretched toward Harrison. She's exhausted, Claire whispered, stroking her daughter's hair. The medication changes always wipe her out for a few days. When is the surgery scheduled? Harrison asked quietly. Not for another 4 months, they want to wait until after the summer, let her be strong and healthy going into it. Give her one more normal summer before, Claire's voice cracked. Before what? Before everything changes again, before she has to be brave again. She's only 5, Harrison, she shouldn't have to be this brave. Harrison reached out, covering Claire's hand with his own. She's brave because she has you as an example. You're the strongest person I've ever met. I don't feel strong, I feel terrified. Bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it. They sat in silence for a while, connected by their joined hands and the sleeping child between them. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the world washed clean and glistening. I have a proposition, Harrison said eventually, and before you say no, just hear me out. Claire looked at him warily. I'm listening. Bennett Technologies has a charitable foundation. We support various causes, healthcare initiatives, educational programs. What if we created a new program specifically for families dealing with pediatric cardiac care, covering costs that insurance doesn't, providing support services, connecting families with resources? You could help design it using your experience as both a medical professional and a parent. We could help dozens, maybe hundreds of families. And coincidentally help my family in the process. Claire's tone was dry but not hostile. Yes, Harrison admitted. But it wouldn't just be about you, it would be a real program helping real people. You'd be doing the work, guiding the foundation, making sure the money goes where it's actually needed. What do you say? Claire studied him for a long moment. You're serious about this? Completely serious. I have more money than I know what to do with. Why shouldn't some of it go toward something meaningful? Toward helping families like yours who are fighting battles nobody should have to fight alone. I'd want control over how the money is spent, Claire said slowly. I'd want to make sure it's going to families who really need it, not just shuffled around for tax purposes. Done, you'd have complete authority over the program. And I'd want to work with the medical team, make sure we're supporting cutting-edge research into pediatric cardiac conditions. Absolutely. And this isn't charity, this is me working for your foundation, earning a salary for legitimate work. If that's what makes you comfortable, yes. Claire's jaw worked as she processed this. Finally, she nodded. Okay, but we start small, a pilot program. We help 5 families first, learn from the experience, then expand if it works. I won't be responsible for wasting your money on a program that doesn't actually help people. Deal, Harrison said, feeling something loosen in his chest. Not quite relief, not quite joy, but something close to both. We'll start Monday. Rebecca, my assistant, can help with the paperwork and logistics. This is crazy, Claire said, but she was smiling. I met you 4 days ago and now I'm going to be running a charitable program for your company. Is that the craziest part? Because I'm pretty sure the craziest part is how much I care about you and Ivy after 4 days. The words hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Claire's breath caught, her eyes searching his face. "Harrison, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I'm just being honest. You asked why you matter to me, and that's why, because somehow, impossibly you do, both of you do." Claire's eyes filled with tears again, but this time she didn't try to hide them. "This is terrifying," she whispered. "I haven't let anyone in since Ivy's father left. I haven't trusted anyone to stay. What if you change your mind? What if this feeling fades and we're left picking up the pieces?" "What if it doesn't?" Harrison countered. "What if this is real? What if we're building something that could be extraordinary if we're just brave enough to try?" Before Claire could respond, Ivy stirred, yawning and rubbing her eyes. "Is the movie over?" she asked sleepily. "It is, baby," Claire said, her voice thick with emotion. "Time for your evening medication and then maybe a bath before bed." "Can Harrison stay for dinner?" Ivy asked hopefully. Claire looked at Harrison, a question in her eyes. He nodded. "I'd love to stay if that's okay." "It's more than okay," Claire said softly. Dinner was leftover spaghetti reheated and served with significantly less ceremony than lunch. Afterward, Claire gave Ivy her medications, a complex routine involving multiple pills and careful timing. Harrison watched, understanding more fully now the weight Claire carried every single day. The constant vigilance, the knowledge that one missed dose could have serious consequences. When Ivy was finally bathed and in her pajamas, she insisted Harrison read her another bedtime story. He wheeled into her small room, selecting a book about a little mouse on a big adventure. Ivy climbed into bed, Mr. Whiskers tucked under her arm, and listened with drowsy attention as Harrison read. "Harrison," she said when the story ended, "are you going to be my friend forever?" The question pierced him. "I'm going to try my very best to be," he promised, "for as long as you want me around." "Forever then," Ivy decided matter-of-factly. "Because you're nice and you make mommy smile and you don't treat me like I'm going to break just because my heart is special." "Your heart is very special," Harrison agreed, tucking the blanket around her, "just like you." "I love you," Ivy said simply, the way children do, without fear or hesitation or doubt. Harrison's throat constricted. "I love you too, Ivy." He meant it. Somehow, in 4 days, this little girl with her bright ribbons and her brave heart had become impossibly precious to him. The thought of anything happening to her, of her having to endure another surgery, another recovery, another fight for her health, made his chest ache. Claire was waiting in the living room when he emerged, 2 fresh cups of coffee on the table. They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, the apartment quiet around them. "Thank you," Claire said finally, "for today, for everything, for seeing us." "Thank you for letting me in," Harrison replied. "I know it wasn't easy." "It wasn't," Claire admitted. "I've spent 5 years building walls around Ivy and me, keeping us safe, keeping us together. Letting someone past those walls feels like the biggest risk I've ever taken." "Is it worth it?" Harrison asked. "The risk?" Claire looked at him, really looked at him, her gaze steady and clear. "Yes," she said simply, "I think it might be." Harrison reached for her hand, and this time Claire didn't pull away. They sat like that, fingers intertwined, 2 people who'd found each other in the most unexpected way, facing uncertain futures but facing them together. "I should probably go," Harrison said eventually, though he didn't want to. "It's getting late and you have an early shift tomorrow." "You could stay," Claire offered quietly. "The couch pulls out, it's not fancy but it's comfortable, and honestly I think Ivy would love waking up to find you still here in the morning." Harrison's heart stuttered. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Claire smiled. "Besides, we have a foundation program to plan and I have approximately 1 million questions about how that's going to work. We might as well start tonight." They talked until midnight, sprawled on opposite ends of the couch, planning and dreaming and building something neither of them had thought possible a week ago. Claire asked intelligent questions about funding mechanisms and program structure. Harrison contributed his business expertise, but mostly he listened, learning from Claire's hands-on knowledge of what families actually needed. When exhaustion finally claimed them both, Claire made up the pull-out couch with fresh sheets and an extra pillow. She paused at her bedroom door, looking back at him. "Harrison, I'm glad you came to that cafe last Wednesday. I'm glad your date stood you up." So am I, Harrison said. Best thing that never happened to me. Claire laughed softly and disappeared into her room. Harrison transferred from his wheelchair to the couch bed, going through his nightly routine in this strange space that already felt more like home than his penthouse ever had. He woke to the smell of pancakes and Ivy's delighted squeal of "Mommy, Harrison is still here." He stayed all night like a sleepover. Morning light filtered through the thin curtains and Harrison could hear Claire in the kitchen, could hear Ivy's running commentary about everything and nothing. He lay there for a moment just listening, just being present in this moment that felt like the beginning of something extraordinary. His phone buzzed, a text from Rebecca. "Hope your lunch yesterday went well. Just so you know, I've cleared your Monday morning schedule. Had a feeling you might need time to work on something important." Harrison smiled and typed back, "You're the best assistant in the world. And yes, something important, very important." He got himself together and wheeled into the kitchen area where Claire was flipping pancakes while Ivy set the table with intense concentration, making sure each placement was perfect. "Morning," Claire said, glancing over her shoulder with a smile that made Harrison's chest feel too small for his heart. "Hope you like pancakes." "I love pancakes," Harrison said. And he did, but more than the pancakes, more than the coffee or the sunshine or the comfortable chaos of this small apartment, he loved this feeling of belonging, this sense of purpose beyond spreadsheets and board meetings, this connection to two people who'd reminded him what it meant to be alive. They ate breakfast together, making plans for the week ahead. Claire's shifts, Ivy's kindergarten schedule, meetings to set up the foundation program, real plans with real commitment building toward a real future. As Harrison prepared to leave, calling Thomas to pick him up, Ivy hugged him tightly around the waist. "See you tomorrow?" she asked hopefully. "Tomorrow," Harrison confirmed, "and the day after that and the day after that." "Forever and ever," Ivy pressed. "Forever and ever," Harrison agreed. Claire walked him down to the lobby, leaving Ivy upstairs watching cartoons. They stood together in the small entryway, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "This is real, isn't it?" Claire asked. "What's happening between us? It's not just my imagination." "It's real," Harrison confirmed. "Scary and unexpected and completely real." "Good," Claire said, "because I don't think I could handle it if it wasn't." She leaned up and kissed his cheek, a gentle press of lips that lasted barely a second but felt like a promise. Then Thomas was there with the van and reality was calling Harrison back to his other life, the one that suddenly felt less important than it had a week ago. But as he rode back toward downtown, Harrison knew everything had changed. The accident 3 years ago had taken so much from him, had redefined his entire existence. But maybe it had also led him here to this moment, to these people. Maybe losing his ability to walk had taught him how to truly see. Maybe his loneliness had prepared him to recognize love when it finally appeared. He pulled out his phone and opened the picture Claire had sent him from the butterfly garden. Harrison smiling, a butterfly on his shoulder, looking happier than he'd been in years. He set it as his phone background, a reminder of how beauty could land unexpectedly, how joy could find you when you least expected it, how family could be built rather than born. His phone buzzed, a message from Claire. "Thank you for staying, for everything. See you tomorrow. We'll change the world together, one family at a time." Harrison typed back, "One family at a time, starting with ours." Because that's what they were becoming, he realized. A family, not conventional, not typical, but real, built on courage and kindness and the willingness to risk vulnerability for the possibility of connection. 3 years ago, Harrison Bennett's life had ended. But today, sitting in the back of his van, rain-washed city streaming past the windows, he realized something profound. Sometimes life doesn't end. Sometimes it just transforms, becomes something different, something unexpected, something better than you ever imagined possible. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, a little girl with light-up shoes and a woman with tired eyes and a brave heart teach you that being broken isn't the end of your story. It's just the beginning of a new chapter, one written with more compassion, more understanding, more love than you knew you were capable of. Harrison Bennett had been left alone at a cafe, abandoned and humiliated, but a stranger with a little girl had walked in and everything had changed. Not because they'd fixed him, but because they'd shown him he didn't need fixing. He just needed connection. He just needed to be seen. He just needed to remember that worth isn't measured by what you can do, but by who you are and who you choose to become. The city stretched out before him, full of possibility, full of promise. Somewhere in that city, Claire was probably checking her work schedule, Ivy was probably playing with Mr. Whiskers, and both of them were probably thinking about him the way he was thinking about them. With hope, with anticipation, with love. And that, Harrison thought with a smile, was worth more than all the money in the world. The lesson: life often teaches us that our greatest transformations come not from our triumphs but from our trials. Harrison learned that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts but in authentic human connection. Claire discovered that accepting help isn't weakness, it's courage. And little Ivy showed them both that being different doesn't mean being less. Sometimes we have to lose everything to discover what really matters. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually doorways to our best ones. Sometimes the people who change us forever are the ones we meet by complete accident or perhaps by design more beautiful than we could ever imagine. The real story isn't about a billionaire helping a struggling family. It's about three broken people, each dealing with their own pain, their own challenges, finding wholeness in each other. It's about building family not from blood but from choice, from commitment, from showing up day after day even when it's hard. Harrison's wheelchair didn't define him, Ivy's heart condition didn't limit her, Claire's struggles didn't diminish her. Instead, these challenges became the very things that made their connection possible, that taught them empathy, resilience, and the extraordinary strength found in vulnerability. In the end, Harrison didn't save Claire and Ivy, they saved each other. And that's how the best love stories work, not one person rescuing another, but two souls recognizing each other and choosing every single day to walk or roll forward together into an uncertain but hopeful future. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to this channel to support our growth and help us bring you more inspiring stories like this one. Drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from and what lesson you're taking away from Harrison, Claire, and Ivy's journey. Your engagement helps us reach more people who need to hear these messages of hope, resilience, and love. Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs encouragement today, and remember, your story isn't over. Sometimes the best chapters are still being written. Until next time, choose kindness, choose courage, choose love. The end.